Hello and welcome to part 4, I believe, of the Beta Garmon coverage. In this case, we're going to be going over the Shattered Legions topic. Now, if you're listening to this on or watching this on YouTube, there is a podcast stream available to Patrons if that interests you, and you can find that in the links below. And if you're going forward and see any rules mistakes, I'm doing this on day after release, actually, the Shattered Legions one. If you do see any rules mistakes, that anything that I've got wrong, any interactions actually that you find interesting that you want adding to the comments, put it down below and I will pin the best ones if I can find the pin function, right? There's surely a pin function. And it's just interesting to expand all of our knowledge as we go through. Obviously, it's early days with Shattered Legions. Now, I've left this till video 4, and this ties into being in the comments, is that this is the most contentious of all of the ones that I've seen online. It's one that I wanted to get into the swing of doing the reviews of the book before I actually tackled this topic. Do you know what? Reading through them, there's definitely some rules errors in here, right? I'm not going to just be saying that they're amazing. Like, I've liked some things elsewhere in the book. I actually quite like the Shattered Legions rules. In the spirit of them, I think, is the caveat to that. It's a bit of a mess, is what I'm going to say, in how they're going to operate. It's going to be quite obscure, and until you really start getting them nailed down, they're going to be a slowdown to the game. Now, they actually write a caveat in the designer's notes to this, in that they are going to be obscure and they're going to slow down the game. So that's something to bear in mind. And it's worth saying that actually in the box of rules interactions, it's got the first mention of this isn't designed for tournament play. And I think that's the first time it's been mentioned in the Heresy context, in that there are tournaments that go on in Heresy. Up to now, it's been sort of a thing where the community isn't that interested in tournaments. There's been one or two pop up, obviously, but the majority of people have got a fairly relaxed way of play, and there's the narrative base to events. So it's going to be interesting how much they're going to respond and push this going forwards. So it's actually something of note straight away, outside of even the rules of these Shattered Legions, is the acknowledgement that they're designing things for tournament play, which I don't know how far I agree with designing things for tournament play, how well Games Workshop are actually doing that in these bigger core game systems. So we'll just have to see that going forward, but I thought it was worth pointing it out, an interesting note that's in there. And I bet I get into it with Miles on Friday, actually, when we talk on the Hobby Hammer cast, which will be Hobby Hammer 11, because I'm recording this in the past from when it's really been released. So that's worth saying there. Yeah, it's the difficulty in, I think, of it being a mess is mostly that you're going to have to keep track on the fly of what rules your Shattered Legions have and how that's going to interact phase by phase. It's calculated at the start of the phase, and actually I think I've moved on to the next page now. It's calculated at the start of the phase, and each unit will have different minor, major, and flaws that are applied to each of it. Yeah, and at the end of each phase is a bit of that's very granular. I know, really, you could calculate it turn by turn and just cut down on that bookkeeping. I think maybe that would have been the way to go if it's going to adapt each game, like and across the game. Now, Heresy 1 used to do Shattered Legions by contain the units. Each unit is separate with its Shattered Legion. I know that doesn't accurately represent how they are in the lore, but just having your base Legion rule, and that's the same as everyone else's Legion rule, and then having, I think you could maybe join characters. No, you could only have characters in the units that they were in. So it made it very easy on the bookkeeping when someone came in with a Shattered Legions force, although there was some jiggery pokery on Rites of War where you could get like toughness 5 suzerain. It it was a much cleaner system than the feeling I'm getting from these rules. Now, on the flip side to that, as I said in video 3, which was the generic marine rules, I tend to rate everything on like a power level scale, and maybe that's not appropriate here. Maybe, well, I suppose it'll be said just going forwards as we work through. Maybe the scale here, because they've specifically not written it for tournament play, they've said it's more of a casual thing. Maybe the best is like coolness, usability, understandability scale of like the overall Shattered Legions. The usability, I think, is it's maybe something that you're going to have to really get used to. If you choose to play this army, you're going to have to know the rules inside out. They've got a note to say keep a track of the benefit, so you can choose up to 3 legions to include in there, and it might be worth having cards that you place with very simplified benefits of each unit that you can swap in and out, and have a card for each variation that you could have. And that's going to be a bit of a pain in the arse, and it's going to clutter up the table, but it's going to be the easiest way of keeping track of what unit is what at any given time. Now, actual operation of the rules, instead of having your normal Legion Astartes rule, you have the Legion Astartes Shattered Legions rules. And what that does is allow you to take veteran squads as troops, and they gain line. Very fluffy for the Shattered Legions. Perfect rule for the Shattered Legions, right? In addition to that, you're going to get any unit that takes a dedicated transport gains the support squad special rule. So if you take a veteran squad with a transport, they are now a support squad, so can't be used to satisfy your compulsory troops, though they will still have the line rule, which is a big... I mean, the line in general is just a big boost. It's essentially giving you the Pride of the Legion right of war, so long as you don't want to take Terminators as those compulsory troops, and just giving it you all the time. Finally, no unit or upgrade can be selected that is restricted to a certain Legion Astartes X special rule, excluding Legion Astartes Shattered Legions, which you don't actually have any units that are specific to Legion Astartes Shattered Legions yet. So maybe that's just in there as a placeholder for later. It would be nice to see some of those like mixed squads, even if they were a generic mixed squad that could be added anywhere. On the flip side of that, it's not in this bullet point, but you can take the Legion war gear that your main Legion is. So say an Imperial, plucking off the top of my head, an Imperial Fist Praetor could take a Storm Shield, even though they've got Legion Astartes Shattered Legions in this context. And there were Imperial Fists, Artist Van 5 as the most obvious Shattered Legion point, where you get the mixing of Salamanders, Iron Hands, and Raven Guard. But they were Imperial Fist up there, especially in orbit, so they can join onto that Shattered Legion quite nicely, even though you've only got 3, right? 3 to pick. That's the most obvious one. Or the 3 that I've mentioned is the most obvious ones. They can be applied to any of them, and we've actually got on the next page, or the page before, just a list of every Legion that you can pick from, and they're all on there. And it's nice that there is this sandbox nature to the Shattered Legions. I think it is high up on the coolness scale, and it will just allow you to do any of the sandbox way that you want to do to generate your force. You can't take Primarchs or Demon Primarchs in Shattered Legions because they're actually all situated. Although in Angel Exterminatus, you do get the Iron Warriors fighting alongside the Emperor's Children. They're not mixing squads, they're still together as legions with the Primarchs there. So there's not this like sort of shattered nature. Now, with the Shattered Legion Astartes rule being in effect, you will only gain access to generic rights of war, and that's because the other rights of war, the Legion-specific ones, are only able to be selected by primary detachment with the Legion Astartes, like White Scars or Imperial Fist or whatever. And you don't have that, you have the Shattered Legions, Legion Astartes rule. So just bear that in mind when you start making your force. And yeah, let's get on to a bit further along. So how is the Mutable Tactics, it's called, going to operate for your bonuses. Primarily, you get, primarily, first you get the hero traits. These are applied to independent characters that are just on their own. You get any major, minor, and flaws that would apply to that as well. Models with vehicle never benefit from heroes. So if you do take like Armored Breakthrough, Rite of War, you don't get to use any hero benefits for that tank in your company command tank. Next, you've got the main ways that you'll be using your minor, major, and flaw traits. So basically every unit will be made up of a mix, or can be made up of a mix of Shattered Legions. If you've got a unit composed entirely of models representing one legion, you get the minor benefit from the mutable tactics and the flaw from the same legion. If you've got a majority and a minority, you get the major benefit of the majority and the minor benefit of the minority. And then the flaw that you get is the unit in the minority, which is a bit of a weird way to do it, but I suppose it is what it is. It's however they've decided to do it on that particular one. Units composed of a single model that are split after deployment, such as dreadnoughts, suffer from the minor mutable tactics trait and the flaw, which is going to be a problem on one of the units at least. That I think we pointed out first in the Goonhammer review, and yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it, right? If you've got 2 legions in there, that falls under that. If you've got 3 legions in a unit, I believe the minority benefit of both legions. Now, it actually states legion in the singular in that paragraph, which is this paragraph here. So although it states it in the singular, it says if you've got 2 or more in that unit, you gain the minority benefit of the legion. I'm sure that's supposed to be multiple legions, right? But the jury's out on that one, whether you just choose one of them or you take both of them. And I suppose that's why this comes down to tournament play and not using it in tournament play, and you just agreeing with your opponent what is meant to be the actual way forward with the Shattered Legions rules. If you are a tank or a tank squadron, your mutable benefits do take effect. It mentions specifically things like javelins, like you discard the crew when you're counting it. It's what the actual tank is painted as, and it will come effect into the squadrons. Most of the things benefit infantry largely, though some of them, like, I don't know, a Shrouded Save, it's in Raven Guard and Alpha Legion, come into effect that bit more. There's some sort of nice benefits for some tanks as we go through. With that, we'll get onto each individual Shattered Legion rule and think about any combinations that could be used with it. But do bear in mind, with this not being like a power guide and just actually like a coolness guide, because it's not tournamenty, it's not tournamenty, we're just going to think about how they can interact. So first we've got the Dark Angels. We've got the hero benefit, Champion of Old Caliban, where the model gains Monster Hunter special rules. So that's re-rolling wounds against Automata, Dreadnoughts, and Primarchs. Now, on the face of it, just immediately thinking about from a generic Legions perspective, not brilliant. The things that you're going to be attacking those with are Thunderhammers, Power Fists, the usual. However, noting that you can get the Legion's War Gear specifically, the Strength 6 on that you will gain from the Tyrannic Greatsword because of the +2 strength, making your Space Marine Strength 6, will mean that you wounding on 4s and Murderous Strike on 5s and Rending on 5s, you'll reroll those fails to wound and it'll actually trigger much more often because of that. And so it's quite a nice benefit in that situation against, obviously, Dreadnoughts, Automata. Against Primarchs, you'll get the Rending off more because the Murderous Strike doesn't really matter against Primarchs because they don't take multiple wounds from instant death. But it's a nice little benefit in keeping with the Dark Angels. And I quite like it as something that you can take Dreadnoughts out with because they're quite a problem, right? Or can be a problem to get rid of. So Ruthless Bladesman as your major benefit. So this is when your squad is in the majority. And I'll say that for the first few and then probably tail off. If the unit is the winner of an assault, each enemy unit that's lost suffers an additional -1 penalty to their morale check. Potentially very, very strong. When you are already winning that combat, it will magnify your ability to just sweep opponents. And really, that's when this will come in, is when you're with Tartarus, anything but Cataphracti, basically. Because if you've got Cataphracti, a lot of the time you want to stay in combat so that you can keep doing that damage, especially if you charged, because if you charge, you know you're going to be, or you at least think you're going to be winning that combat. So otherwise, you want the benefit to be sweeping the enemy rather than remaining locked. You never really want them to get away and not sweep. Good for assault units, good for the knightly order that the Dark Angels represent. The minor benefit, you get snapshots at BS2 rather than BS1. It is a minor benefit, right? You get to essentially snapfire your heavy weapon squads at flyers easier, though flyers tend to go down anyway. If you're pinned or falling back, do your snapshots at BS2. Not the greatest one in this list, especially like as we get onto the Emperor's Children and further, but is an okay benefit. Now, the downside, reduce the leadership characteristics of all models in the unit by 1, which is when you're in the minority of the unit. This is a big one, I think, because your heroes will take that if they join. So you'll get Praetors with leadership 9, your sergeants leadership 7, without a sergeant leadership 6. It's a really, really big negative. So you actually all like pretty much always want to be in the positive, even though that minor benefit isn't that great. This just compounds that. If you've got Dark Angels included, you want to be in the majorities of the unit in general, and you never want to be on your own in a unit with only Dark Angels. Always leave that last dude to represent another legion, because otherwise, -1 leadership for you. Emperor's Children, we've got the Swift Blade Master. The model gains Duelist Edge 1 special rule. A nice little handy thing. It represents the Emperor's Children quite nicely. It can be quite clutch when you've got a Praetor with a Paragon Blade. If you want to go for the Paragon Blade kills, not obviously as good as the main benefit of Emperor's Children that they have. I don't think it's as good as the Monster Hunter benefit of the Dark Angels, but it can be all right. Unparalleled skill, when making it a hit roll in the assault phase for a model in the unit, a roll of 4+ is always successful. Now, because of the changes to the weapon skill chart this edition, hitting on a 5 if you're a tactical marine or a despoiler squad versus a more elite infantry unit that might have weapon skill 5, I think this is actually a really good benefit for your line squads. So if you've got Emperor's Children in your Shattered Legions, maybe you're hunting down some White Scars, you really want your line troops and your bigger units to have this. Think it's a really good major benefit, one of the better ones, even though it only makes you hit on an average score, right? Minor benefit, Expert Duelists. Emperor's Children models in the unit gain Chosen Warriors special rule. Also a very, very good minor benefit. It means that every turn you can just essentially tank a Primarch, so long as you're not going to run away. If you can get stubborn from somewhere, or if you've got something else that gives you Fearless in a challenge, say like a Herald in a unit, you can just have a big squad of tactical marines, 20 of them, tie up a Primarch all game because you're Fearless. So a really nice benefit, obviously situationally useful against just normal squads, something that you don't want to tank a load of wounds. If your opponent's not got their Praetor in that particular combat, it's not going to matter as much, but can be really, really nice and represents the duelist nature of the Emperor's Children, them all being like, no, I'm the best, really well. The flaw, the Warrior's Pride, if you choose to refuse a challenge and there was an eligible Emperor's Children model from this unit that could have accepted, which will be all of them because you've got the minor benefit and the flaw, models in this unit suffer -1 to hit rolls till the end of the turn. accept that challenge, right? To get your tactical marine to tank all of the hits unless you think you're going to win anyway. And if you were going to enter the challenge yourself, it's not a downside. Hardly the worst flaw to have in any of the Legion traits, really. Especially with how it interplays with all gaining chosen warriors as the benefit that you're getting in that squad. We've got the Iron Warriors that comes next. So your hero with calculated strikes, the model gains the Sunder special rule. Because it only affects attacks with this special rule, it means that only your Praetor HQ independent character style model is going to get this benefit. So it only affects their attacks, it only affects armor value. So not the best one, because a lot of the time your hero will be just absolutely crushing tanks unless they're a Land Raider anyway, because they tend to have power fists in my experience, or Thunderhammers, strength 8 or better. And if they've got a Paragon Blade, you probably want to be taking a Melter Bomb anyway for that clutch situation where you just need to slap a Melter Bomb on something. It's only ever really when my HQs have taken fists or hammers that I ever consider not taking Melter Bombs. We've got the major benefit. When making a shooting attack, the unit gains a bonus of +1 to armor penetration rolls and +1 to wound against Automata and Dreadnought unit types. This is excellent. It is the Legion rule. It is the Legion rule. Really great. There's nothing at the start of Heresy 2. Like, you might have heard me say that Iron Warriors don't have that great of a special rule. I think we were seeing lots and lots of just infantry heavy armies all over the place. In tournament settings, I still think we're seeing that. But I think that actually as Heresy 2 has progressed, we've seen more balanced armies of tanks and things like that. And with Iron Warriors rules being really good against tanks, this major benefit is excellent. And I'll revise my my rundown of Iron Warriors in this moment right now to say that the Iron Warriors rule is also excellent when your opponent isn't playing a super tournamenty list. So the minor benefits, accustomed to devastation. Now, this is also excellent. Models are considered to have a leadership characteristic of 10 when resolving morale checks in the shooting phase. This is actually what I know I've just said the last one is excellent. This is what represents Iron Warriors to me. This is what I've wanted as a Legion trait all Heresy 2, because this is a tie-in to what Iron Warriors had in Heresy 1. Someone had asked you, you've got to take a morale check for that shooting attack, haven't you? And you're like, no, I'm an Iron Warrior. And it was the smuggest, nicest feeling in the world, because that was your Legion trait. You just outlasted in the shooting phase. And it's bad. I don't think they could have made it as good as Auto Pass in Heresy 2, with leadership being more of a thing. But being leadership 10 in the shooting phase for morale checks, absolutely excellent. I want some way to take the minor on major benefit here, but I'd settle for... If I could just take a Shattered Legion of 1, please. The flaw, uncontrolled volleys. When making a shooting attack as part of a reaction, weapons used for that shooting attack gains the Gets Hot special rule. This ties in with the Iron Warriors advanced reaction, which gives Gets Hot to their shooting attacks having Gets Hot. Obviously, it's a lot worse in units that have a low AP as standard, and it's worse in units with strength 8 or more, because they'll double out any, say, like veterans that you have. It's not that terrible. It can just kill some dudes, right? But as they go, I think it's quite characterful with how they've set up Iron Warriors in Heresy 2. I quite like it. Overall, I've got to focus on Iron Warriors a little bit, right? Overall, I really like actually where the Iron Warriors are in this like Shattered Legions rule set. It actually makes me jealous of Primary Detachment Iron Warriors rather than Shattered Legion Iron Warriors, because these are excellent rules for representing them in game. Shake out really well except for the hero trait, and if the benefit is not too bad of a benefit, and we've got 2 out of the 3 positives that are absolutely excellent, there is just no complaints at all. Next, onto White Scars, we've got the Storm of Blades. A model gains the Sudden Strike 1 special rule, so +1 initiative on the charge. Better, I would say, than the Emperor's Children one, because it affects in and out of challenges. Obviously, it's going to require you to be charging to get it off, but a decent benefit representing the scars is Lightning Strike nature, represents them quite well. Quite like it. Swift of action, the major benefit. Each time a unit runs, it gains the Shrouded 5-up special rule until the start of the acting player's next turn. Now, this will be good or bad depending on whether or not you play opponents with lots of Cognis Signums. And that's, or I suppose Raven Guard players, Night Lords players, because Night Fighting, or Night Vision specifically, ignores the Shrouded special rule. So this can be really good for combat units that just want to sprint up the board. You can be pulling those white scars during the shooting phase that you've run. So you've still got the Shrouded because it's calculated at the start, or I suppose before the shooting phase and doesn't end till the end of the shooting phase. You get the Shrouded after running the movement phase of your last turn. You get shot in your enemy's turn, pull the scars, and now you've got a different major rule for when you start assaulting. I think it's actually a really nice rule for combat units. Fleet-footed, the minor benefit, when running or making sweeping advances, moving as part of a reaction, all units count their initiative as 6. Well, this, I think, is very good. It's going to make you really likely to sweep your opponent. It's going to tie nicely if you do a Scars Dark Angel. And I'm just going to leave it, I'm going to suggest combos and leave it open to how the hell this works in the fluff. But having the Dark Angels special rule of major and the White Scars minor really well, because you're going to be sweeping more often and actually causing them to run away so that you get to sweep more often. The flaw in this is if every model in the unit does not end the movement phase at least 4 inches from where it began, each model in the unit suffers a -1 to their leadership characteristics until the start of the acting player's next turn. This is why I sort of thought it was a bit weird that it's the minor benefit that gets the... This is why I sort of thought it was weird that the unit in the minority provides the flaw, because why are my majority dudes scared if the White Scars aren't running about? Like, surely they don't care about being 4 inches away from where they started. Basically just means that you don't want a minority unit that is heavy weapons. Surely would the majority of the unit heavy weapons Scars, they would be more scared about being exactly where they are all the time. But it's such a minor complaint that I'm harking on about. It's not the worst unless you've got a heavy weapon. If you've got a heavy weapon, it's bad. It's bad. Have a Master of the Signals on the field because the models suffer -1 leadership rather than the Master of Signals that can provide their own leadership for that one test a turn that you're taking and matters. Next comes the Space Wolves. You get the Savage Berserkers rule for any heroes. The model gains Reaping Blows 1, which is an extra attack if you're in base-to-base contact with one or more enemy models. I really like it. It's an extra attack, which is always solid, right? It's increasing the output of your Praetors by 25%, Centurions by 33%. So actually a really big benefit there. The major benefit is Spirit of Fenris. So during a turn in which this unit successfully charges, all models in the unit gain +1 to wound. Incredibly good, incredibly good. It will stack quite nicely with even just if you've got the Legion War Gear of your Fenrisian Axe, which has Reaping Blow 1, +1 strength. It means that Fenrisian Axe is actually wounded on 2s, so he's now actually better than a Chainsword, when previously actually normal Space Wolf rules, they're not actually any better than a Chainsword statistically. I think the Chainsword actually comes out on top. But the Spirit of Fenris means that wounded on 2s is just an absolutely great benefit. Minor benefit, 1 hand on their blade. Models in this special rule may still fire bolters or bolt pistols in a turn in which they've run. If they do, they fire snapshots. It's a minor benefit if you're charging forwards, if you've got a combat-orientated squad. Is decent. It's I say decent, is minor. It's a nice little homage to the Space Wolf rules that confers as well. You've got Undisciplined Assault. Each time this unit is selected to make a charge, the controlling player must make a leadership test for it. If failed, it's disordered. You will be basically mitigating some of the things like Furious Charge that we're going to see later, or things like that. It's not the absolute worst ever because it's leadership check. Your assault units tend to have higher leaderships anyway because they're usually either accompanied by a character if they're an assault squad or something to boost the killing power, or they're just an elite squad with high leadership anyway. So it's not the worst thing ever, but it's bigger than, say, I would actually say it's bigger than the Iron Warriors Gets Hot special rule. Definitely not as big as the Dark Angels -1 to your leadership, though. Imperial Fists, and this is sort of a mixed bag, much more so than the Iron Warriors, which are good, sort of bad. And I'm drawing that attention just so that all the Imperial Fist players know, we win this one, I think. Hero is, you gain the Crusader special rule, which is when you're making a sweep in advance, you roll 2 dice and discard the lowest. Useful in sweeping things down. Fits in with the Temple of Oaths, I guess. Not as good as Reaping Blow 1, better than Sunder, I would say. Devastating Volleys. The unit gains a benefit of +1 to wound for the major benefit, with bolt pistols, combi bolters, and bolters as part of a shooting attack, including as part of any reactions. It's better for bolt pistols and stuff like that, right? It's okay getting that benefit. Similar to the Legion trait, actually, it's what the Legion trait, I suppose, it's on to wounds instead of to hits, but it's here and there, I think. It's what the Legion trait was in Heresy 1, where it just applied to bolters, combi bolters, and pistols. Now, the minor benefit, I think, is really good. Defensive Instinct. Improve the cover save of models in this unit by 1. For example, models in this unit that have a 5 up cover save instead of a 4. It doesn't grant cover saves to people in the open. They hunker down real well, right? They hunker down real well. Characterful, I think. And basically, I think we've got the worst flaw out of any of them in this list of Shattered Legions. If the controlling player has any of their reaction allotments remaining, this unit must make a reaction if it's eligible to do so. Now, you've heard a lot of times how I really don't like warlord traits of Iron Warriors because they take your unit's options just and give them to your opponent, essentially. If I was the opponent of a player with this, I'd fire the first 2 targets would be wherever I just don't care about, into a Rhino, into a Javelin that has got bad targets. I'm using that as the option because it was earlier in this piece about Shattered Legions. But yeah, it's taking that out of your hands just means, I'm going to fire at tactical squads and burn your reactions if you've got a minority of Imperial Fist, which you do actually want because Defensive Instinct is really good. It takes it out of your hands as the Imperial Fist controlling player. And it's just absolutely crippling. You might as well have no reactions. When someone learns to exploit this, yeah, you might as well just have no reactions, which is absolutely crippling. Night Lords. Now, here we've got one of the best hero traits, and that is because you Master of Terror, the model gains a Fear 1 special rule, and that is something that essentially confers, and it confers in a real good way, -1 to enemies' leadership from a hero trait. All the other traits affect largely just that one model. Here is one that affects the entirety of the enemy's unit because you only need that one Fear 1 model to affect all of the enemies within 6. Really, really good trait, fits in with the Legion rules, fits in with how the Legion operates list building wise with Terror Assault and the Panoply of Murder. Trophies of Judgment, not Panoply of Murder. And yeah, it's really, really good as an actual rule. The major benefit, you've got murderous intent. At the start of the sub-phase, if this unit outnumbers the enemy models in that combat, models in the unit gains +1 to hit until the end of the phase. Models with the bulky X count as the number of models equal to the value included as part of this special rule. I really like it. It encourages big squads like Talent for Murder does. It's much more similar to Talent for Murder in the Heresy 1. Love this as a major benefit. Ties in nicely to a lot of other benefits that you will get on assaulting. I think it's just a really good benefit. Fits them nicely. The minor benefit, trophy takers. When making a sweeping advance with this unit, roll an additional d6 and discard one of them. Essentially Crusader, because you pretty much you're always going to want to sweep your enemy. I never see a place where you don't want to sweep your enemy. It's they sort of this thing in the rules that they sometimes write like you must perform sweeping advances. When would I ever not perform a sweeping advance? There's just absolute lunacy. Here, you essentially get that Crusader benefit is a nice little thing on top, but with the major benefit and the hero benefit, you surely going to be going for the major benefits all the time rather than this minor. The flaw as well, wary of a fair fight. Now, this is the biggest problem with the Shattered Legions rules in terms of a rules operation sense. And that is because the major benefit of the Night Lords is the one that you're going to want, which doesn't then give you the flaw, whereas the Imperial Fist minor benefit, which comes with the flaw, is the one there that you want, instead of the Imperial Fist major benefit, which is the bolters getting +1 to wound. So you can mitigate the Night Lords one by just taking your casualties from the already minority other legion and not actually getting the downside that these Night Lords are going to suffer, except for in the list building stage. This unit may not declare a charge unless it outnumbers the target unit. Models with the bulky X special rule count as a number of models equal to the value included as part of this special rule. Dreadnoughts don't have bulky. In addition, if this unit is the loser in an assault, it suffers -1 to the resulting morale. Dreadnoughts only count as one model, so I can't outnumber anything. And that's a unit I want to get into assault with. If you're going to take Dreadnoughts as a Night Lords player and you want them Night Lords Dreadnoughts, you're going to have to go dual shooting weapon. Now, this is surely a mistake in the rules that Dreadnoughts need to count as 10 models, but it's going to be cripplingly bad for anyone with even a single fist on their Dreadnoughts. It's not great. It's definitely a negative to the rules writers that they didn't spot that one, because that should have come up straight away. They should have known better on that one. Blood Angels, we've got Fierce Nobility. This model gains the Furious Charge 1 special rule. Furious Charge 1 only affects that model. It's +1 strength. Quite nice with a Paragon Blade if you pair it with a Moritat with rad grenades, so that you can double out your opponent in that first turn when you're charging. But obviously it can be denied. So it's sort of here and there, because when they see you've set up a Moritat and something with strength 6, that's the one that they're going to hold the line against. Vengeful Blow, the major benefit, means that during a turn which this unit successfully charges or is successfully charged, so now it's actually on both ways, like the Sons of Horus rule, which got FAQ'd recently in December, didn't it? And so it's better than your actual normal Legion trait. You get +1 to wound with weapons that don't have the unwieldy special rule. It's sort of a 50-50 on how much you care about that. I wouldn't be putting too many power axes. It's mainly the power axe that it affects, because Thunderhammers, Power Fists, they'll be wounded on 2s anyway. You don't care. Axes would go from 3 to 2, but don't because of this special rule. Swords, which are definitely more of a Blood Angel's weapon, this does affect. So power swords, Paragon Blades, things like that. So he's pushing you into that realm that actually I think fits the Legion a bit more. Space Wolf weapons will benefit this when the Space Wolves obviously have to be in the minority. It's a thing that is very useful. The minor benefit, and Carmine Guile. During a turn in which the unit successfully charged, gain the Hammer of Wrath 1 special rules. Don't ever see Hammer of Wrath killing that many things because it allows armor saves, and Marines have good armor saves. But it's a nice little fringe benefit. There's some of these minor benefits that are just incredibly good. Imperial Fists, Iron Warriors spring to mind. Obviously, the Fist we've just gone through, that they've got a cripplingly bad minor flaw. But this is not one of the best minor benefits in any sense of the word because of that allowing armor saves. The flaw, Furious Bloodlust, the unit must declare a charge in any of the controlling player's assault phases if it is eligible to do so, and if there's at least one model within 12 and line of sight. Because it's not like based on a leadership check, like some of the other things are triggering, it can be quite bad. However, what you can do to mitigate it is simply just fire your rapid fire weapons, run, or a heavy weapons squad fires its heavy weapons. It's no longer eligible to charge, so therefore doesn't suffer from this flaw. So think about your positioning when you've got Blood Angels in the minority. Think about what you're firing. Don't worry about it too much with heavy weapon squads. And it is what it is. It's on the face of it quite bad. When you think about it more and more and what things you can do to make yourself not eligible to charge, you can get round it quite easily, I think. Iron Hands, we've got the Cybernetic Devotee. The model gains It Will Not Die 4+, which is a very good value for that. You get Unleash the Storm. Each time a model makes a shooting attack, the target unit is within 12. It gains +1 to all to wound rolls made with that shooting attack. Where the hell did this come from? This is an incredible benefit to just get all the time. Within 12, it's sort of comparable to the Sons of Horus benefit, though we'll get into that later. The Sons of Horus benefit was based off the Heresy 1 benefits that they got. This is just kind of crazy. I suppose it represents quite nicely the Iron Hands going mental after Istvan 5. So I can see like its fluff justification. It is really, really good. I am surprised that it's not -1 strength to incoming shooting when someone's outside of 12 or something like that. I'm surprised it's not something like that more so. But I quite like it. I quite like it. It's a good rule. And when you start considering the fluff justifications, becomes easier to stomach. Iron Resolve as the minor benefit. Each time a shooting attack is allocated to an Iron Hands player, the models gain a Feel No Pain 5+ against that attack. Essentially, if your Iron Hands are in the minority, you can save on apothecaries. If you just have a single Iron Hands in the squad, you're going to get this all the time. So just by painting one of your dude's Iron Hand colours, you're going to get that downside. Now, the flaw, overly cautious, you can't run and make sweeping advances. Don't have that single dude in your assault squads, because sweeping, unless it's a Cataphracti squad, Cataphracti actually will benefit from that quite a lot just by having that Iron Hands member. Any other squad that you want to be running people down, and that includes heavy squads because they can sweep in advance, remember, you just want to be sweeping, man. If you've got a tactical squad, it's not too bad, but it can be absolutely crippling for an assault unit that you just want to like devastate enemy lines. World Eaters, we've got the Champion of the Arena. The model gains Rage 2, fitting with the Legion rule that they've currently got in the main Legiones Astartes rules. Very fitting with World Eaters, obviously. Quite nice as a hero benefit. Violent Intent. When making a charge roll for this unit, roll 1 additional d6 and discard one of the results. Good for both getting the charges and getting high sweeps if you fail it. Not sweeps, surges when you fail the charge. Pretty good. I would have liked to see something where they get extra damage output when they're charging, but it's still quite a nice little benefit, though this should have maybe been in their minor benefits. Raging Slayers. During a turn in which a unit successfully charged, the first failed armor saving throw for this unit in the fight subphase is ignored and has no effect. This has no effect if your armor save is being ignored, so it's not as good as the Eightfold Path Rite of War benefits. Eightfold Path? Bloody Ruin? Whatever it's called. The one that makes you ignore the first wound. Strangely, no offensive benefits for the World Eaters there. Kind of crazy. I'd knock the major benefit down to minor and surely give them a benefit of an offensive thing on the charge, which is what the Legion's all about. I mean, I know they get to take the chain axes and things like that, but it just seemed crazy that that's not built into the rules, that the main like sort of berserker assault legion, their legionaries are just guys with different axes. I suppose if they're operating as part of a Shattered Legion, maybe they've calmed down a bit to work with their squad mates a bit more, but yeah. Berserker Frustration as their flaw. If the unit is within 12 inches of an enemy unit and the charge is not declared for it during the controlling player's assault phase, you must take a pinning check for the unit. Sort of like the Blood Angels downside, which is that you've got to declare that charge. Sort of like that, but you retain a bit more control. A pinning check, it lasts until the end of your next turn, so if you're failing them all the time, it could really do in your army. It also triggers on those heavy weapon squads because you don't have to be eligible to charge and forced to make a charge. It's just if you don't declare any charge, you have to take a pinning check. Now, obviously, situationally, that could be much, much worse. But sometimes you're just going to have games where it just never takes effect. So I can't write it off as like one of the worst downsides that there is. Ultramarines, here we get Obstinate Defender, gain the Stubborn special rule, good because it confers, it affects the entire unit, it can have big repercussions. If you've got a hero of the Ultramarines with some Emperor's Children, Chosen Warriors in there, this is where you can tie up Praetors very easily with just a cheap Centurion and a big tactical squad. You've got Methodical Fighters. Each time you make a shooting attack or declare a charge, the enemy unit wants to declare a reaction. They've got to pass a leadership check first. This is like anything based on a leadership. It could take effect all the time. It could never take an effect. So it's not the best one, not the absolute worst. You've got Prepared Attack Pattern. Each time a unit makes a shooting attack as part of a reaction, add +1 to hit with the shooting attack. Really nice to just have a minority of Ultramarines in like a heavy weapon squad, something like that. The flaw, Strict Chain of Command. Each time the unit is selected to make a reaction, must make a leadership test before expending a point from your reaction allotment. If failed, you cannot make a reaction this phase. Again, it's leadership. It does play with your reactions, which I have said is absolutely crippling for the Imperial Fists. But here, the leadership check or not do it. I mean, you could have a Master of Signals in there, something like that that's high leadership, so it's not always coming into play. It's a downside. It's a harsher downside than some of the others, but it's not crippling in the same ways that the Fists is. Death Guard, you've got the Resolute Endurant. Gain Feel No Pain 5+ special rule. What to say about this? It's one model gains Feel No Pain 5. It's your hero benefit. It's on the same level as the Iron Warrior's rubbishness, I would say, because you can just get, Iron Hands get entire squads essentially gaining that Feel No Pain 5. And here you only get it on your hero. Now, to make up for that, Inexorable Assault is essentially your Legion rule for Death Guard, so long as you don't move more than 7. So it's a bit more controlled version of it. If no model in the squad moves more than 7, it's counted as stationary until the starting of the controlling player's next turn. Doesn't affect vehicles or artillery, so as I said, more restrained as well there. It does affect for heavy weapons, so it also doesn't say that it can't be done when you get out of a transport. So one of the big weaknesses of the Death Guard reaction is that you couldn't pop out a reaction. Legion Astartes trait, you couldn't pop out of a Rhino with a multi-melter squad and just blast into someone. With Inexorable Assault, if you're in the majority, yes, you can here, which is kind of a nasty combination, I think. Minor, you get the Children of Barbarous, a 3-up invuln versus dangerous terrains. I mean, I know dangerous terrains come off sometimes. Weirdly, it's going to affect a lot of the time assault units the most because they're the ones that jump into cover and die. It's outside of that, how many dangerous terrains are we taking that we need a 3-up invulnerable against it? Don't know. The flaw is the Unhurried Death. When this unit runs, makes a sweeping advance, or moves as part of a reaction, models in the unit are counted as initiative 2. So you both don't get a great benefit, get a massive downside. It's not as bad as Fists or Ultramarines or some of the others, but it's not brilliant. At least you do get to shuffle a little bit, though. Only 1 inch in terrain. Weird. Thousand Suns, Master of Farseeing for hero. You get this model gains a Psyker subtype and Divination discipline. Divination is essentially the psychic discipline that allows you to do Divinatory Aegis. That gives precision shots and strikes to a unit within 12 on a 6+, or you can take a psychic check and they get precision shots and strikes 5+. Incredibly useful for when you've got like a las cannon squad and you want them to just kill an enemy Praetor. Really good, if not rage-inducing for your opponent. They also get the Psychic Dart, Psychic Weapon, which is a range 18, strength 6, AP 2, sniper, assault 1, and guided fire power. Guided fire being that you don't need line of sight, but they've still got to be within range. Again, just like nice for just sniping off like sergeants from out of line of sight. I think it's actually one of the better hero benefits. It's quite a lot of benefit for no cost because you just get this hero benefit for your leader. The major benefit of Thousand Suns is the Wielders of the Warp. 1 non-vehicle Thousand Suns model in the unit gains the Prospering Wrath Psychic Weapon, and he's treated as having the Psychic unit subtype for being purposes of using it. It does not give the model access to other Psychic disciplines. What the Prospering Wrath is 20 range 24, assault 1, rending 6, and the strength being 3 plus the number of Thousand Suns model in the unit to a maximum of 10. So if you've got 5 Thousand Suns models in the unit, you're going to be doubling out Marines. If you've got 7, you're going to be striking tanks at strength 10. I think it's a really good power. It's giving anti-tank opportunity to every guy or every unit in your army, so long as these guys are in the majority, and it's giving doubling out opportunity as just a basic thing to everyone that is just rocking about in a tactical squad. The minor benefit is if the unit falls back, models in the unit are counted as having an initiative characteristic as part of sweeping advances. So when you lose a combat, roll 2d6 plus 6, and that is your total. It's going to make it really hard for your opponent to catch you, but situational because it's benefiting you on an already lost situation rather than actually helping you win that situation in the first place. The flaw, Undisciplined Mystics. Whenever a result of 11 or 12 is rolled for a morale check or pinning check, the unit suffers perils. Get punished for failing morale checks. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's hardly like being forced to react. But sorry, Imperial Fist players. It's not the worst. You do take more casualties this way, but I think the major benefit and the hero benefit are actually worthwhile of ending up with this flaw sometimes. Sons of Horus get Furious Charge 1. Second time it's cropped up. They're furious at charging. They're good close quarters, angry fighters. Punishing volleys is the major benefit, and this is the main one that I sort of wanted to harp on about. A unit that makes a shooting attack that targets a unit within 12 gains a bonus of +1 to all to hit rolls during the shooting attack. It's like the Sons of Horus benefit from the second half of Heresy 1, and is just an incredible benefit for short-range firepower. Like, it benefits you when you rapid fire, benefits orbital drops, benefits from jumping out of a transport near someone. Phil used to use it on me to great raging effect. And it's just actually nice to see it back. And yet, really good benefit power-wise, like it. Minor benefit, Legacy of Brutality. At the start of the fight subphase, if this unit is outnumbered by enemy models in the combat, models in the unit gain +1 to hit rolls till the end of the phase. Models with a bulky X account as the number equal to the included in brackets. So basically, you actually want to be outnumbered by your enemy, and you fight harder because of it. It's quite nice. It's quite nice. It's different to what they used to have, which is essentially like Talent for Murder, where they used to like put the boot in Merciless Fighter style, and when they outnumbered because they're gang fighting and stabbing people. It's in a better place. It represents how the Legion is so dominating in their assaults, even with a lesser number of models. I really like it, how it represents the Sons of Horus at this point in the war, being like mid-war. And yeah, it's a good solid rule, 2 good solid rules for the benefits. And the Towering Arrogance, each time a unit is eligible to declare a reaction to a shooting attack or charge declared by an enemy unit, if it outnumbers the enemy unit, it's not eligible to make a reaction. Models with the bulky X count as the models equal to that. So basically, you never want to outnumber your enemy units. It doesn't affect, like, it will never stop you from taking anything. Like the Night Lord's flaw will stop you from taking combat dreadnoughts because they'll never be able to assault. It's one of the worst downsides, I think, because it determines when you can react. It doesn't do too much of a downside to your elite units, though, because they tend to be smaller, because they're more expensive, they've got lower model limits. So it's not the worst of the worst, but it is one of the big downsides of the Shattered Legions that are out there. Now, to mitigate it a little bit, you could take more smaller units, maybe even nicely represent how Shattered Legions tend to take tend to take casualties and can't replace the losses. So it maybe even builds you into quite a nice theme. It's just game-wise quite a big downside you need to be aware of. Word Bearers, you get Surety of Purpose, hero level, gain Stubborn. Decent is a nice counterpoint during the Shadow Crusade to the Ultramarine Stubbornness. Obviously, a good special rule is Stubborn. Ties in nicely with Emperor's Children, probably more fluff-wise as well. Got Zealous Devotion as the major benefit. During a turn in which this unit has successfully charged, the combat results are a draw, then you win by 1. I would say this is more of a minor benefit level. Yeah, it's you want something that helps you win things. A draw isn't the worst result ever, unless you really need to do it in the last turn, and that's fairly situational, more like a minor benefit would be. The minor benefits, Righteous Determination. When making a morale check or pinning check, the unit adds additional d6 and discards 1. Again, this is like the Heresy 1 benefits. I really like it. It harkens back to that age. It also ties with the leadership benefits that Word Bearers get nowadays, in that they're just more solid and reliable than other legions, just to do their fanatical zeal. I like it. It's useful. Makes you reliable in game terms. Eternal Penitence. When you fail a leadership check, morale check, or pinning check, suffer an automatic wound with no saves or damage mitigation of any kind allowed. Now, this actually ties into that minor benefit that you're getting. You're going to be failing those less. So it's not the worst. When I was doing my initial read through of these rules, I was like, oh, that's not very bad. And I hadn't put 2 and 2 together until a couple of hours later. And I was like, oh, the minor benefit is helping you avoid the worst downsides of this. It ties together quite nicely. I like it. as a flaw. It's not coming off that often. In your Praetors unit, Centurions unit, the Stubborn is preventing it, because you're going to be really reliable in that unit with Stubborn, probably, or trying to get to a minor benefit. Taking that flaw isn't too bad there. And actually, weirdly, you're going to want to be in the minority of units pretty much all the time, even though you've got this flaw that causes you to take more wounds. And that play in the Shadow Crusade, you get lots of the time, you see these hordes and hordes of World Eaters, and a small number of Word Bearers working together very methodically, or the Word Bearers are working together methodically at least. So it represents what we see in the books quite nicely, and I like it as a rule set, really. Salamanders, so this is part 2 of the Loyalist Shattered Legions. We get Master Armourer, gain Battle Hardened 1. Now, this is something you could already take on a Praetor through having the Mantle of the Elder Drake, which grants Battle Hardened 1, just as a piece of armor. So you could take that as an upgrade anyway for the Praetor, but you get it obviously on all these Centurions and stuff. So if you're playing with a Raven Guard or Iron Hands Praetor, you get this really big benefit anyway as the Salamanders. I really like it. It's one of the best single model affecting special rules that there is. So can't really be any complaints there. Not like it can be denied on the charge like Furious Charge. The major benefit, Scions of the Flame. When a model in this unit is making a shooting attack with Flame, Melter, Plasma, or Volkite weapons, gain +1 to wound. It ties in nicely with if you've got a support squad, heavy weapons squad. It's quite nice. Flamers aren't in the best place anyway. It's nice to see a bit of a boost to them. Melter, I don't know how much you care except against Dreadnoughts. Volkites, it's meaning that chargers are wounding on 2s, so that's a very nice benefit. And Plasmas, it means that against Dreadnoughts, you're wounding much more often, although you're not actually getting the breaching any more often. It's a nice benefit. It's not like the best out there, but it's quite a nice benefit in anything that helps Flamers, to get them into the game a bit more. Minor, Steadfast Bulwark. During a turn in which this unit successfully charged, all models in the unit gain Feel No Pain 5 until the end of the turn. Really nice, really nice. Sort of plays off the Iron Hands benefit, where they also get a Feel No Pain 5 when they're in the minority. So it's you getting this Feel No Pain 5 representing how stubborn and how resistant they are to incoming damage from 2 sources. We'll see if the Raven Guard get Feel No Pain 5 right. Prudent Fighters. The unit may not declare a shooting attack or charge that targets unit that are falling back. That doesn't really ever come into it, because if you try and charge a unit that's falling back, it tends to just rally anyway, so you don't tend to do it. You just let them run away. If you declare you can't declare shooting attacks at units that are running away. You don't really ever anyway, because you shoot, they fall back at the end of that phase. You don't get a chance to shoot at them again until after the enemy player has had their turn, in which case they're either running again or they've just rallied, so this doesn't come into effect. The big downside to this is it may not make sweeping advances. Oof. So you've got a minor benefit that isn't as good as the Iron Hands minor benefit, and a downside that again includes can't make sweeping advances. So even though when you get that minor benefit, the flaws here of the main Shattered Legions mean that your likelihood is that unless, I suppose if you have all 3, if you've got units that are mixed with all 3, you're not going to be sweeping advancing. Which is sort of crazy, it's a big downside to have all the time. Raven Guard, you've got Scions of the Shadow Master, Precision Shot 6, Precision Strike 6. Quite a nice fluffy rule. Precision shots and strikes. On a 6 though, 6 is never trigger enough for me to care about them. Invulnerable save 6, don't care. Murderous strike 6, it doesn't trigger enough for me to be truly afraid of it. It's a nice little fluffy rule, but if I'm taking a Raven Guard character that I want to be assassinating people, I'm likely going to take the Vigilator, who just has Sniper anyway. I mean, we see sort of a better effect that's similar on the Thousand Suns. I know that's a psychic power that doesn't fit with the Raven Guard, but the psychic power of that Thousand Suns spreads to other units and gives the entire unit up to a 5-up precision shot, which then is very good. This is a single model that does it on a 6. The major benefit, expert snipers. Each time a unit makes a shooting attack, excluding with heavy or ordnance weapons, the controlling player may allocate the first wound. Best on melter squads, I would say. Sniper squads, you're already doing that because of sniper. Heavy and ordnance is a hit because it means that a lot of tanks won't be able to benefit from this. It means that the things that you really are desperate to get those precision shots from don't get any benefit from it. And that's because those heavy weapons are the ones with high strength. The only ones really that don't are the melter, as I said before. Masters of Obfuscation. If the closest model in the unit is more than 18 inches away, all models in the unit have the shrouded 6-up rule against the shooting attack. 6-ups I don't really like. Army-wide can be quite good. The 18-inch range is a bit of a killer, though. I mean, I think it's 12 inches for a normal Raven Guard detachment. This being 18, I know that sort of like ties in how like some of the unit don't have the proper colours on, but I mean, they stand out. They're wearing really bright green and have shiny bionics, some of them. It's just, I don't think a rule that works super well. Floor-wise, you've got the Shadowkin. If it's not fully in a zone of area terrain, like woods or ruins, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of models in the unit. Again, a really big downside. Like, you don't always want to be hugging cover. And even if you have units that are like only 2 Shattered Legions in each out of the Raven Guard, Salamanders and Iron Hands, it's weird that they've given them all really big downsides. Like, I mean, these are they're the Shattered Legions, not the resurgent, like, fighting hard Shattered Legions. They have got some decent benefits. They just seem to have gone wild with, like, these flaws in these, like, the 3 Istvan Legions. It's crazy. Even the fists are, like, semi, and, like, I know they're not the main Istvan Legion, but they were there, and they're really bad as well. Did they just, like, who's in the Istvan 5 massacre? They're all going to be really bad. And I like what they're trying to do with these Shattered Legions rules. It's just weird that it's in these places. The crippling ones tend to be. Alpha Legion, you get Masters of Subterfuge. A model gains the False Colours special rule that the Alpha Legion Saboteur has. So that is if your character hasn't declared a charge or made a shooting attack at any point in the game, you can't be shot at by an enemy unit, which is quite effective. This is the first time that I'm really going to be like, oh, these characters want to be on their own. Now, if a character is on their own, I suppose it could have come up with Raven Guard Vigilators as well, but that means that you gain all of the hero, major, minor, and flaws of the Legion. So this one's specifically wanting to be on their own for every Alpha Legion character for it even to take effect at all. The major benefit, the assassination tactics. During a turn in which this unit is successfully charged, gain precision strikes 5. So a big unit of Terminators, all painted Alpha Legion colours with Thunderhammers, with one other model in there, I suppose, you gain precision strikes 5, which is crazy sauce. Absolutely crazy sauce. It's a really good rule. Obviously, you have to be charging for it to take an effect. Precision strikes 5 on an entire unit. Really good when you start getting into powerful weapons combinations that can go with, and largely that will involve doubling people out, like normal Terminator on Terminator combat tends to try and be. Minor, you've got Masters of Misdirection. If an enemy unit makes a shooting attack that targets this unit, and there is another eligible target unit that is closer to the enemy, models in this unit gains a Shrouded 6 special rule for the duration of that shooting attack. Basically, if there's another eligible target for your opponent to be shooting at that's closer than your unit gets a Shrouded 6. Better than the Raven Guard minor rule, I think, because it's so long as you've got your like units that you don't want to be shot at behind another unit, maybe you've been bubble wrapped by auxilia that you've taken through taking an overseer, maybe you've done that, you gain a benefit from that just immediately, which is fairly good. It doesn't matter how close the opponent actually is, though, as it has the fringe benefit of them being closer. They offer your opponent that they're less likely to be closer to another target, though that 18-inch range on the Raven Guard rule is just so big. The flaw, look after their own. When allocating wounds to models in this unit, the controlling player must allocate to non-Alpha Legion models if possible. That's fairly crazy. It's a big downside because it means you want to be back in the majority. So going back to assassination tactics, whenever you're in the minority, you're going to be in the majority again with no control over it at some point. So be wary of that when allocating models. Other than a 2 Shattered Legions force, if you've got a third, obviously you can stay in the minority, though neither of the majority or the minority are cripplingly amazing. The majority one, you sort of always want to be in the majority with it anyway if you're going for that precision shot strike, hammers and fists, so you don't care about pulling other models. If you are in the minority, it's not that overwhelmingly good that I'm like, oh my god, I really want to maintain my leadership 10 on morale checks or my cover bonus. It is what it is. So it's really the Alpha Legion get a good hero benefit. The flaw isn't going to affect that hero if they're on their own making use of the false colours rule. And that brings us to the end of all of the legions. Hopefully, listening to this, it's sort of assuaged some of your fears of how these Shattered Legions operate, other than the actual can't be used downside of the Night Lord's Dreadnought. It's the other downsides are things that already exist in the game, like losing control of your units a little bit. And it's just things to be aware of. They're not things that you should stop you playing these Shattered Legions, especially with the notes that they can't be used in competitive play anyway. If you're doing it for the love of the game. That really should be the driving force of this. I think it is a bit of an inspired rule set. Like, as a wrap up, I think it is going to be very confusing when these are swapping about all the time, because they're not all things that are just like +1 here, +1 here. They're things that even alter how you allocate wounds. You sometimes even say that the Raven Guard one from the other side of this page, the flaw only takes effect when you're out of terrain. So there's some fairly complicated overlapping things here that are going to make them a bit of a nightmare to play bookkeeping wise. With that being said, like, obviously we'll see how fast they actually shake out. I'm going to have an actual game with them usage, and I'll maybe put a counter on the bottom of how long it actually took for that game, or we'll just say it at the end. Next, we're going to get onto the special characters. And these are, again, I think they're quite fun and characterful, but maybe a bit of a mess, and we'll get to it when we come to it. So Hibou Khan is 165 points. So like we said in the generic Space Marine Legions video, is about the price what you'll be paying for a Praetor. So that's the comparison point here. You can have Weapon Skill 6, which is Praetor equivalent. Strength Toughness 5, no changes there. 2 wounds, so 1 down from a Praetor. Initiative 5, 3 attacks, 1 down from a Praetor, and Leadership 9, 1 down from a Praetor, with a 2-up save. So immediately at that point, you're going to want some actually quite large benefits to taking Hibou Khan in place of just a normal Praetor. Hibou Khan can actually be taken in both Legion Astartes White Scars armies, and if he is the Warlord, you've got to take Sagyar-Mazan as your Warlord trait. If he's taken in a Shattered Legions detachment, you can't take the Sagyar-Mazan because they have to be taken by primary detachment White Scars, and you don't have that, which means that essentially you can't take the thing that ties in with these rules. And that's because you have the Karash special rule. The Karash special rule means that he gives away no victory points for his death, can't join squads that don't also have Karash, which you can't include any squads that have Karash, because there's no way to get it through taking Sagyar-Mazan, because you can't in a Shattered Legions force, and you can't be joined or join a squad that doesn't have Karash. Now, one way that you can get round it is to take a Master of the Legion style retinue. That is because in the same way as you can't join an apothecary to a Legion command squad, because it already contains an independent character and you can't join independent characters, you're not joining a command squad, I believe. So it sort of feels a bit of a long way round. If I've massively put my foot in it there, please do leave it in the comments below, but it's the only way round that I can see of having Hibou Khan in a Shattered Legions force and allowing him to be part of a squad, because I don't think technically he's joining that command squad. He's just part of that command squad from list building stage. Now, if you are in a White Scars army, you just don't have any problem with it at all. Just take either Sagyar-Mazan, which is one of the better rights of war in the game, or have some Eben Keshig. Now, taking it then at point of he's in a command squad, what do I think about him? Well, just from this point of that being a massive fuck up, what do I think about Hibou Khan? Now, the stubborn rule is good. Karash is good. It means he's not going to give away any victory points for Slay the Warlord, which means if you play in Alpha Legion or against Alpha Legion, they can't get the Headhunter Leviathan extra victory points, or someone playing for whom the bell tolls won't get any victory points there. He's actually a really, really good special rule for denying victory points left, right, and centre. He's got the Shattered Fifth. That's what allows him to take or to be in a Shattered Legions force, and he exchanges his White Scars rule for Legiones Astartes Shattered Legions. Stubborn, excellent rule. Sort of makes up for Leadership 10 versus Leadership 9, I would say, because as soon as you lose combat by 1, your Praetor is now Leadership 9 anyway. So if you lose combat by 2, it's better. Now, that doesn't do anything to help with the 2 wounds. I know Karash sort of does, but you still do want your Praetor level 170 point character to be a little bit survivable at least. Now, they are sort of writing these as his stat line as if he's this joint Centurion Praetor level character. He's got Feel No Pain 5+ paired with a Refractor Field 5, like for the 5+, but obviously that won't go off against everyone's favourite weapon. The Seeker of Atonement Warlord trait is actually quite cool. You gain the Rampage 2 special rule, and that confers to the unit under his Warlord trait, so you gain an additional 2 attacks for anyone that is outnumbered or if you are outnumbered in combat. You also then have this split placement of your reaction, depending on whether Hibou Khan is dead or alive, which is actually a really cool out-of-the-box thinking rule that I'm really drawn to. So you get it if he's alive in the movement phase, and if he's dead in the assault phases, you guys go crazy and hold the line better. It would have been nice if it like gave you counter attack when he died. But I see what they were going for there. He's a really nice little switcheroo. Plays into the Karash special rule really nicely. And I actually really like that part about this character. The weapon, which is the thing that we're all interested in, right? Let's see how that stacks up. So the Breath of the Storm is a +2 strength, AP3, two-handed, sudden strike 1, breaching 4 up, murderous strike 6 up weapon. Initially, I would just immediately be like, oh, it's AP3, rubbish. Breaching 4 means that it's not as good as a Paragon Blade, right? Which you'll wound on a 3. Yes, this wounds Marines on a 2, but it wounds on a 3. And they're both murderous strike 6 up. The sudden strike 1 allows you to play into the Paragon Blade a little bit more. That Paragon Blades are usually going for, like, if you're taking one, you going to try and kill that Thunderhammer Praetor before they strike you. Now, this weapon will allow you to have a go at killing that Paragon Blade Praetor before they strike you. And that is quite a nice little rule. So I can sort of see why it's been toned, because as the benefit of striking first increases, your risk in using the weapon increases. And so although it's not a brilliant weapon, looking at the sort of the top of Breath of the Storm to Fist Thunderhammer, it does maybe have an argument versus the Paragon Blade. So I like how they've actually been thinking about that within these rules, or at least that's what I read from this weapon. For the 165 points, I'm not fully convinced, but I just like where they were going. It's like in the generic Marine characters. I like the gist of it. It's not an army changing character that he's got, but it's again another character that is like a side grade that may have an option that you want. Represents quite nicely in a succinct format Hibou Khan as he's portrayed in the books. Saying that, come on, could have done better with the Rite of War whilst having Shattered Legions rules, right? It's just absolutely crazy. All it needed was him to be able to take it within his own special rules and the character's fixed, or just some way of getting Karash on one unit if he's taken in Shattered Legions. It seems it seems absolutely crazy that they've missed that. Shadrak Meduson is not in that same boat. For 175 points, again, Praetor level, so that's the comparison point here again. We've got a weapon skill 5, so 1 down from a Praetor, strength toughness 4, 3 wounds now, initiative 5, 4 attacks, leadership 10, 2+ save. So yes, you're going to be hitting other Praetors on 5s, but I think as we work through the rules, it's again not earth-shatteringly good, but the intention for this like slight tweak on a Praetor profile to give it a different feel and to represent Shadrak Meduson is to weather the storm and provide an army buff, and then potentially just get one hit in that downs your opponent. You've got Storm's Wrath, which is a bolter basically with rending 6 as like the difference in it, as well as Master Crafted. It's just a nice little thing. The Albane Power Gladius, which is a power sword essentially with +1 strength and breaching 5 rather than breaching 6, that's also Master Crafted. So not really a Praetor level of weapon at all. It's really unusual to see anything but a 2-up or a very good breaching number, like minimum 4, right, on these weapons. Because as I said, on Hibou Khan, you've got worse than a Paragon Blade by going to breaching 4 rather than AP2 all the time. Now this is one step even further, breaching 5. To pull that back a little bit, you have Battle Hardened 1, and that will make you survive much more easily against enemy Praetors' attacks combined with an iron halo. And then you have your servo arm, in which you can then double out a Praetor and get rid of them. So it's like sort of weathering the storm a little bit, Shadrak Meduson style. I do sort of like it. If I'm a bit of a gambler and just like to give people a claw. So what else do you have? You've got obviously Relentless that all Praetors have. Stubborn, again, a nice little addition to the unit. Will keep you around. It's leadership 10 this time. That's it for the main changes to the character. You've got the Shattered 10th, which is again like Hibou Khan's rule. Differing from the normal Shattered Legions rules, you can take this character even though they have Legion Astartes Iron Hands, and you replace it with the Legion Astartes Shattered Legions rules. And he must represent an Iron Hands Legionary. Not a massive shocker there. It just allows you to take them in Shattered Legions as well as Iron Hands detachments. The Warlord trait is what really you are here for. If chosen as the Warlord, once per battle, at the start of any turn where Shadrak Meduson's controlling player is the active player, this special rule may be activated. For the duration of the turn, all models in the same detachment as Shadrak Meduson with Iron Hands or Shattered Legion special rule, so either of the forces that you're going to be leading as Warlord, gain the Furious Charge 1 and Hatred Traitors special rules. Furious Charge 1, fairly good. It can stack with some of the other bonuses that you get. Hatred Traitors, very, very good. Just as a Legion-wide rule, is re-rolling all your to-hit rolls if you like spect into combat can be really, really nice. I mean, the Raven's Talons on Raven Guard characters and units, excellent. I'm sure James, who plays Raven Guard, would love to just have army-wide hatred all like for one turn, the crucial turn. Having Thunderhammers with hatred on the other end of the spectrum, absolutely excellent. So yeah, it's a really good army-wide buff for that turn. And actually, I think it makes the character worth it. You're not expecting a ton of output from Shadrak Meduson, but for that one turn where you just want to like flick the switch and your entire army goes mental and just does a load of damage to your opponent, I do actually think it justifies that 175 point cost. And he's just going to stick around a lot more. If you can take a challenge a bit better and deny your opponent's Praetor a load of wounds or just ripping through your squad, and then allow your own squad to do a load of work with their own weapons while you're just sort of holding the line, and then you sweep the opponent's Praetor and get the kill. Just make sure you don't have Salamanders or Iron Hands as your minor benefit and flaw. Make sure you have Raven Guard in that turn, because otherwise you can't sweep. But yeah, that is Shadrak Meduson. Again, these two characters I like as side grades. I like the tone that they seem to be setting of not completely changing the army and just providing alternates. Do I think they're the most powerful characters ever? No. I think Shadrak Meduson for that entire army buff is probably the better one. Do I think they should have been written better in the context of Hibou Khan? Near definitely. But do I like what they were going for? Yes. And that is my review of the characters. Really, really solid on that one. Sorry, I've been going through these guides, this fourth guide, and I'm really sorry that I couldn't have been more inflammatory on all of my responses to make it more fun. But that's just how I feel about the guide and about the book that's come out. He's in a weird place. I think I'm happy about it, even if the rules aren't the best. And with that, hopefully you've enjoyed the guide. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll catch you next time. In a bit.